petals in the rain. The summer storm had transformed the botanical garden into a glistening wonderland. Olivia Bennet tucked her sketchbook under her jacket, protecting the delicate watercolor illustrations she'd spent the morning perfecting. At 26, she possessed a remarkable talent for capturing the subtle intricacies of flowers that most people overlooked. "Excuse me, but are those lily of the valley?" The deep voice startled her. Olivia turned to find a tall man pointing at her open sketchbook. His tailored suit seemed oddly formal for a rainy Wednesday at the garden, but his curious expression appeared genuine. "Yes, they are, though I'm afraid my rendering doesn't do them justice." She angled the book toward him, raindrops spattering against the protective coating she'd applied to the paper. "I disagree. You've captured something about them that photographs never do." He studied the drawing with unexpected intensity. "The way you've painted the transparency in the bells, it's like they're actually ringing." Olivia felt warmth spread across her cheeks. "Thank you, Mr. Julian." "Julian Westbrook." He offered his hand. "And you are?" "Olivia Bennet." She accepted his handshake, noting the contrast of his smooth palm against her fingers, slightly stained with watercolor. What Olivia didn't know then was that Julian Westbrook was the youngest son of Richard Westbrook, whose hotel empire stretched across 3 continents. She merely saw a man who appreciated the same subtle beauty in plants that she did. "Are you here for the rare orchid exhibition?" she asked, gathering her supplies as the rain intensified. Julian laughed softly. "Actually, I'm here to evaluate the space. My family's company is considering sponsoring the garden's East Wing renovation." "Oh." Olivia felt suddenly small with her second-hand easel and student-grade paints. "Well, it's a worthy cause. The conservation work they do here is remarkable." "And what brings you here on a rainy weekday?" Julian asked, helping her collect a pencil that had rolled away. "I'm illustrating a field guide to indigenous medicinal plants. The author is a botanist at the university." She didn't mention that the meager commission barely covered her rent, or that she supplemented her income giving art lessons to neighborhood children. The downpour intensified, drumming against the greenhouse roof. Julian glanced upward. "Would you like to continue this conversation somewhere drier? The garden cafe makes an excellent Earl Grey." Ordinarily, Olivia would have politely declined. Her mother had raised her with a healthy suspicion of strangers, especially well-dressed men with perfect smiles. But something in Julian's eyes, a genuine interest, perhaps even a touch of loneliness, made her nod. "Tea sounds perfect." The cafe was nearly empty. Julian listened attentively as Olivia explained her passion for botanical illustration, her small apartment that doubled as a studio, and her dream of someday publishing her own collection of artwork. "Most people don't understand why I'd spend hours perfecting the curl of a fern frond," she admitted, warming her hands around the teacup. "I understand completely," Julian said. "There's something meditative about focusing on beauty that others miss." When Olivia finally glanced at her watch, she was shocked to discover they'd been talking for nearly 2 hours. "I should go. My evening students will be waiting." She gathered her belongings, suddenly conscious of her rain-frizzed hair and paint-splattered jacket beside Julian's polished appearance. "Will you be here tomorrow? I'd love to see more of your work." His question seemed hesitant, almost vulnerable. Olivia paused. She sensed an invisible line being drawn in her life, before Julian and after. With a small smile, she tore a page from her sketchbook and wrote her number on the corner. "I teach on Thursdays, but I'm free Friday morning." As she hurried through the garden toward the bus stop, Olivia didn't notice Julian watching her go, nor did she see him carefully place her number in his wallet, rather. Then his phone, as if the physical connection to her mattered. More than digital convenience. She couldn't have known that Julian had spent the afternoon giving her his full attention, while ignoring 3 calls from his father and a text from his longtime family friend and presumed future fiancée, Vivian Russell. The rain had stopped, but Olivia's world had just begun to change, one petal at a time. Golden horizons, the morning sun filtered through the canopy of the Botanical Gardens palm house, casting dappled light across Julian's face as he watched Olivia sketch. 3 months had passed since their rainy day encounter. 3 months of coffee dates that turned into dinners, of gallery visits and quiet walks through the city's hidden gardens. "You're staring again," Olivia murmured without looking up from her sketchbook, a small smile playing at her lips. "I can't help it," Julian replied, reaching out to tuck a strand of her chestnut hair behind her ear. "You get this little crease right here." He gently touched the space between her eyebrows. "When you're concentrating." Olivia finally looked up, her hazel eyes meeting his blue ones. Over these months, she had learned many things about Julian Westbrook, that he had studied architecture before his father insisted he join the family business, that he collected rare botanical books, that despite his wealth, he often seemed lonely among his peers. What she hadn't learned, what Julian had carefully omitted, was the full extent of his family's expectations for him. "I've been meaning to show you something," she said, closing her sketchbook. "But it means going to my apartment, and I haven't exactly had time to clean." Julian's smile deepened. "Olivia Bennett, are you inviting me to see your etchings?" She blushed but laughed. "My apartment is my studio. You can't really know me without seeing it." 2 hours later, Julian stood in the middle of Olivia's small one-bedroom apartment, surrounded by her art. Botanical illustrations covered the walls, plants crowded every windowsill, and a drafting table dominated the living space. "It's perfect," he breathed, turning in a slow circle. "It's completely you," Olivia watched him nervously. No one from Julian's world had ever entered her space before. The bathroom sink drips and the neighbor's cooking always makes the hallway smell like curry, but the light is perfect for painting. Julian moved to where she stood and took her hands in his. "I've never known anyone like you, Olivia. You see beauty in everything, even the ordinary." "Especially the ordinary," she corrected softly. That evening, as sunset painted her small apartment in shades of gold, Olivia showed Julian her most treasured possession, a leather-bound sketchbook filled with illustrations of her childhood home in the countryside, the place where she'd first fallen in love with plants and art. "This is my heart," she told him, her voice just above a whisper. "These drawings are my memories, my dreams." Julian closed the book carefully and set it aside. When he looked at her, his expression was serious. "I think I'm falling in love with you, Olivia Bennett." Her heart seemed to stop, then race forward. "I think I already have," she admitted. "Fallen in love with you, that is." That night, with moonlight streaming through her windows, Olivia gave Julian everything, her trust, her body, her heart. It was her first time giving herself so completely to someone, the culmination of months of growing feelings and deep connection. As they lay together afterward, Julian traced patterns on her bare shoulder. "Let's go away together," he suggested. "My family has a house in the south of France. We could spend the summer there. You could paint the Mediterranean flora." Olivia propped herself up on one elbow. "You're serious?" "Completely. I want to show you my world, Olivia, the same way you've shown me yours." She smiled and settled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Yes," she whispered. "I'd love that." What Olivia couldn't see was the shadow that crossed Julian's face, the momentary tightening of his jaw as he thought about what such a trip would mean, the confrontation with his family that would inevitably follow. But as he held her close, he convinced himself that they would find a way, that this feeling, this love, was worth fighting for. The following weeks were filled with planning and dreams. Olivia applied for her first passport, while Julian showed her pictures of the village where they would stay. She took on extra illustration work to save money, though Julian insisted he would cover everything. "I want to contribute," she told him firmly. "I won't be a charity case." Julian admired her independence. So different from the women in his social circle who viewed wealth as an entitlement rather than a privilege. One evening in late spring, he took her to the rooftop restaurant of one of his family's hotels, a rare venture into his world. The maître d' greeted him by name, and Olivia felt the stares of the other patrons as they were led to the best table. "They're wondering what you see in me," she said quietly after they were seated. Julian reached across the table for her hand. "They're wondering what you see in me," he corrected. "And they're jealous because they know I don't deserve you." Under the stars, With the city lights spread before them, Julian spoke of their future, of traveling together, of a life filled with art and beauty. Olivia allowed herself to believe every word, to imagine a world where social divisions and family expectations didn't matter, where love was enough. That night, as Julian drove her home, his phone rang repeatedly. He silenced it each time without looking. "Important call?" Olivia finally asked. Julian's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "Just my father. It can wait." But as he kissed her goodnight at her door, Olivia noticed a tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. Still, when he whispered, "I love you," against her lips, she believed him with every fiber of her being. She fell asleep surrounded by the lingering scent of his cologne, dreaming of lavender fields in Provence and a future bright with possibilities. She couldn't have known that across town. Julian was sitting in his father's study, his head bowed, as Richard Westbrook outlined exactly why the son of a hotel magnate could never seriously consider a future with a struggling artist, and why the merger with the Russell hotel chain, sealed by Julian's marriage to Victoria Russell, had already been set in motion for the following month. Shattered canvas. The first sign that something was wrong came in the form of unanswered texts. Julian, who usually responded within minutes, went silent for 3 days. When Olivia finally received a message, it was brief. "Need to talk. Meet me at the Garden Cafe tomorrow, 2 p.m. The cafe where they had first shared tea now felt different, colder somehow, despite the summer heat pressing against the windows. Julian sat at a corner table, his expression unreadable as Olivia approached. "I was worried about you," she said, sliding into the chair across from him. "Is everything okay?" Julian couldn't meet her eyes. "There's something I need to tell you." The words that followed destroyed every dream they'd built together. A business merger, a prearranged understanding with Victoria Russell, daughter of his father's oldest business partner, a wedding planned for August, barely 6 weeks away. "I don't understand," Olivia whispered, her voice breaking. "Just last week we were planning our trip." "You said you loved me." "I do love you," Julian insisted, finally looking at her. "But this merger has been in the works for years. Millions of dollars, thousands of jobs depend on it. And you're just telling me this now?" Anger began to cut through her shock. "After everything we've shared?" Julian ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she'd seen many times before. "I thought I could find a way out." "I tried, Olivia. My father threatened to cut me off completely, to fire hundreds of employees from the hotels I manage directly. So you're choosing money over love." The words tasted bitter on her tongue. "It's not that simple." "It is exactly that simple," Olivia said, rising from her chair. "You made me believe in something that was never possible." Julian reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Please try to understand. Maybe in time, after the merger is secured, after you're married to someone else." "What are you suggesting, Julian? That I become your mistress?" The hurt in her voice gave way to disgust. "No, I would never—" "You already have." Olivia gathered her bag, dignity the only thing keeping her upright. "Goodbye, Julian." She walked out of the cafe with her head held high, past curious onlookers who had witnessed their intense exchange. Only when she reached the privacy of a garden pathway did she allow the tears to come, hot and fast, blurring the flowers around her into smears of color. The weeks that followed passed in a haze of pain. Olivia threw herself into her work, painting for hours until her fingers cramped and her eyes burned. She declined invitations from friends, unable to explain the magnitude of her heartbreak. How could she tell them that she had given everything to a man who had seen her as nothing more than a temporary diversion? The botanical garden, once her sanctuary, became a place she avoided. Every bench, every pathway held memories of Julian. She found new places to sketch, forcing herself to see beauty in unfamiliar landscapes. 2 weeks after their cafe confrontation, a courier delivered a package to her apartment. Inside was a first-class ticket to France and a key to the house Julian had promised they would share, along with a note. "The house is yours for as long as you want it. No strings attached. It was never a lie when I said I love you." Olivia tore the ticket into tiny pieces and flushed them down the toilet. The key she dropped into the donation box of a local charity shop. She would not accept consolation prizes for a broken heart. The real blow came when she saw the wedding announcement in the newspaper. Julian Westbrook and Victoria Russell, united in a long-anticipated union of two hotel dynasties. The photo showed Julian in a tuxedo, his arm around a willowy blonde in a designer gown. His smile didn't reach his eyes, but that provided little comfort to Olivia as she stared at the image, feeling as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. That night, in a fit of grief and rage, she gathered every sketch she had made of Julian, his hands, his profile, his eyes, and burned them in a small metal trash can on her fire escape. As she watched the paper curl and blacken, she made herself a promise. She would rebuild her life into something so meaningful, so filled with purpose, that this pain would someday seem like nothing more than a distant memory. When the last drawing had turned to ash, Olivia began to plan. The field guide she had been illustrating was nearly complete. With the modest payment, she could afford a small stall at the city's artisan market, where she could sell prints of her work. She applied for a teaching position at a community art center, offering classes in botanical illustration. When they hired her, she threw herself into curriculum development, finding unexpected joy in sharing her passion with others. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the acute pain of betrayal began to dull into something manageable, a background ache rather than a debilitating wound. Olivia moved through her days with a new determination. Each small achievement a step away from the woman who had given her heart too freely. She didn't allow herself to check the society pages for mentions of Julian. She didn't drive past his family's hotels. She removed every reminder of him from her life, filling the spaces he had occupied with new dreams, new goals. The night she sold her first original painting at the artisan market for far more than she had dared to hope, Olivia walked home with a lightness she hadn't felt in months. The customer, a book publisher looking for an illustrator for a new series on urban gardening, had taken her card and promised to call. Standing on her small balcony that evening, looking out at the city lights, Olivia realized that in trying to erase Julian from her story, she had begun to write a new one in which she was both the author and the protagonist. The thought brought a smile to her lips. Small but genuine. She couldn't have known that across town. Julian sat alone in the penthouse he now shared with Victoria, staring at a small sketch of Lily of the Valley that he had kept hidden from everyone, including his new wife, the only piece of Olivia he had left. Blooming alone. 18 months after Julian walked out of her life, Olivia stood in the middle of her new studio, a converted industrial space, flooded with natural light, surrounded by her completed works for Urban Botanica, the book series, that had transformed her career from struggling illustrator to sought-after artist, Ms. Bennett, the photographer from Artisan Quarterly, is here for your interview. Her assistant, Tessa, poked her head through the door. Olivia smoothed her paint-splattered smock and nodded. Send them in. And could you bring the tea service? The good one. The good tea service was a small luxury Olivia had allowed herself after signing her second book, Contract, a hand-painted porcelain set that made her feel simultaneously indulgent and accomplished. It was these small markers of success that she cherished most. The ability to buy art supplies without checking her bank balance first. The freedom to decline commissions that didn't inspire her. The satisfaction of seeing her name on the cover of published works. The interview went well. Olivia spoke passionately about her journey as an artist, carefully skipping over the personal heartbreak that had catalyzed her most productive period. When the photographer asked her to pose with her favorite piece, she chose a large-scale painting of night-blooming cereus, a rare flower that blossomed for a single night before withering away. Why this one? The interviewer asked, scribbling in her notebook. Olivia touched the edge of the canvas. Because it reminds me that beauty can be fleeting and still have meaning. That something temporary can still change you forever. After the journalist left, Olivia canceled her remaining appointments for the day. The interview had stirred memories she usually managed to keep at bay. She needed air, space to breathe. Almost without conscious decision, she found herself walking toward the botanical garden. She hadn't visited since the day Julian told her about his engagement. Now, with autumn turning the trees to gold and crimson, she felt strong enough to reclaim this place that had once brought her so much joy. The garden was hosting a fundraising event. Elaborate displays showcasing rare specimens, champagne flowing freely, wealthy patrons admiring exotic blooms. Olivia moved through the crowd, anonymous in her simple dress and minimal makeup, a welcome contrast to the society women in designer wear. She was sketching a particularly striking orchid when a familiar voice cut through the ambient chatter. "Your technique has evolved." Olivia froze, her pencil hovering above the paper. She didn't need to look up to know who had spoken, but she did anyway, her eyes meeting the blue gaze she had tried so hard to forget. Julian looked both the same and different. His features were unchanged, but there was a weariness in his eyes that was new. "What are you doing here?" she asked, closing her sketchbook. "My family foundation sponsors this wing." He gestured vaguely at the surrounding glass structure. "I saw your interview in Artisan Quarterly. Congratulations on your success." "Thank you." Olivia was surprised by how steady her voice sounded, how calm she felt in his presence. The pain was there, but muted, like an old injury that ached only when the weather changed. "Would you have time for a cup of tea?" Julian asked, his tone careful, neutral. "For old time's sake?" Olivia considered him for a long moment. "No, I don't think so. But you're welcome to walk with me for a bit." They strolled through the garden in silence, the weight of unspoken words between them. Finally, Julian spoke. "I made a mistake, Olivia." She continued walking, her eyes fixed on the path ahead. "Which one? Lying to me about your circumstances or going through with a marriage you didn't want?" "Both." He stopped, forcing her to do the same or walk away. "Victoria and I are separated. Have been for 3 months now." Olivia felt a complicated mix of emotions at this news. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you?" "Divorce is painful for everyone involved." "So yes, I'm sorry you're going through that." She began walking again, and he fell into step beside her. "I never stopped thinking about you," Julian said softly. "About what might have been if I'd had the courage to defy my father." Olivia looked at him then, really looked at him. "What do you want from me, Julian? Absolution? Permission to rewrite our story with a happier ending? I want a chance to explain, to apologize properly." His voice cracked slightly. "I've spent the past 1.5 years building the life I thought I was supposed to want, and all it's brought me is emptiness." They reached a small pavilion where they had once sheltered from a sudden summer shower. Olivia sat on a bench, and after a moment's hesitation, Julian joined her. "I saw your name on the guest list for tonight's event," he admitted. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I almost didn't," Olivia replied honestly. "This place held too many memories. Good ones, I hope. At least some of them." She sighed, looking out at the garden where they had first met. "Yes, some good ones. Olivia, She raised a hand to stop him. "Before you say anything else, I need you to understand something. The woman you knew, the one who gave her heart so freely, who believed in fairy tales, she doesn't exist anymore. I've changed, Julian. I had to." "I can see that," he said softly. "You're stronger now. More confident. I am. And I've worked hard for everything I've achieved." She turned to face him fully. "I won't risk that for anyone, not even you." Julian nodded slowly. "I understand." "I'm not asking you to. He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I just wanted you to know that leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. And I live with that regret every day." As the evening light faded, casting long shadows across the garden paths, Olivia felt a strange sense of closure. The man sitting beside her had once been her entire world, and now he was just a person, flawed, human, no longer holding power over her happiness. "I should go," she said, rising from the bench. "I have an early class tomorrow." Julian stood as well. "You're teaching now?" "At the art college downtown. Botanical illustration. And I have a book signing this weekend." She allowed herself a small smile. "Life moves forward, Julian." As she turned to leave, he called after her. "Olivia, I really am proud of what you've accomplished." You deserve every success. She paused, considering his words. Thank you. I hope you find what you're looking for, Julian. I really do. Walking away from him for the second time was different. The first time, she had been shattered. Each step painful as she tried to hold herself together. This time, she moved with quiet confidence. Her heart scarred but intact, her future her own to shape. Back in her studio that night, Olivia pulled out a fresh canvas and began to paint. Not the delicate, precise botanical illustrations she was known for, but something wilder, more abstract. Colors flowing into each other, boundaries blurring, beauty emerging from chaos. She worked until dawn, letting the unexpected encounter with Julian flow through her and onto the canvas. When she finally stepped back to view the completed work, she saw something unexpected. Not pain or anger, but transformation. She titled it Metamorphosis, and added it to the collection for her upcoming solo exhibition. She couldn't have known that Julian had returned to his empty penthouse and spent the night looking through architectural plans, designs, for a small art school and botanical research center he had been quietly developing for months, a project born from the ashes of their shared dreams. Seasons change. The opening night of Olivia's first solo exhibition transformed the small gallery into a garden of light and color. Her evolution as an artist was evident in every piece, from her early, meticulously detailed botanical studies to her recent, more expressive work that captured not just the form of plants but their essence, their movement, their secret lives. "You've outdone yourself," said Eleanor, the gallery owner who had taken a chance on an unknown artist 18 months earlier. "Every piece tells a story," Olivia smiled, surveying the crowded space with quiet pride. Critics mingled with collectors, art students scribbled notes in the corners, and friends from her teaching days raised glasses in her direction. This moment, this culmination of work and growth, belonged entirely to her. She was discussing her technique with a university professor when she felt a shift in the room's energy. Turning, she saw Julian standing in the doorway, hesitant, a wrapped package under his arm. Eleanor followed her gaze. "Is that him? The inspiration behind Metamorphosis?" Olivia nodded. She had finally told Eleanor the story behind her most powerful piece, the abstract work that had emerged after her garden encounter with Julian. "Should I have security remove him?" Eleanor asked, only half joking. "No, it's fine." Olivia smoothed her emerald silk dress, another small luxury she'd allowed herself for this special night. "Excuse me for a moment." She crossed the room, accepting congratulations and compliments as she moved through the crowd. When she reached Julian, his expression was one of genuine admiration. "Your work is extraordinary," he said, "though I shouldn't be surprised." "Thank you for coming." She meant it. There was no bitterness in her voice, only a calm acknowledgement of their shared past. Julian glanced around the gallery. "I hope I'm not intruding. I saw the announcement in the arts section and—" He trailed off, then offered her the package. "This is for you. A celebration gift." Olivia accepted it with a questioning look. "Open it later," Julian suggested. "When you're alone." Before she could respond, Eleanor appeared at her side. "Olivia, darling, the Times critic is asking for you. He's absolutely enthralled with your native medicinal plant series." With a nod to Julian, Olivia returned to her guests, the package tucked discreetly behind a sculpture. The rest of the evening passed in a whirlwind of conversations and connections. By closing time, red, sold dots adorned most of the displayed works, and Eleanor was already discussing a follow-up exhibition for the following year. It was nearly midnight when Olivia finally returned to her studio apartment, a new space in a converted warehouse that served as both home and workspace. Kicking off her heels, she remembered Julian's package and unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a leather-bound book, its pages filled with architectural drawings and botanical sketches. A note slipped from between the pages. "For 18 months, I've been working on this project, an art school and research center dedicated to botanical illustration, with community gardens and conservation programs. Your passion showed me a different way to see the world, to use privilege for purpose rather than profit. The board approved construction last week. Whether you want any involvement or not, this project exists because of you. It's not an apology. Nothing could undo what I did, but perhaps it's evidence that you changed me for the better. Congratulations on your exhibition and all your success. With admiration, Julian. Olivia sat with the book in her lap for a long time, tracing the lines of the drawings with her fingertips. The design was beautiful. Glass and sustainable materials, spaces filled with light, classrooms overlooking garden beds. A vision that somehow merged his world and hers. The following morning, after very little sleep, Olivia called the number Julian had included with the note. "I'd like to meet," she said when he answered, "to discuss your project." They met at a small cafe, not their old one, but a new place, neutral territory. Julian brought additional plans and spoke with passion about the educational opportunities the center would provide for underprivileged students. "The trust is structured so that the Westbrook family can never take control," he explained. "It will always remain independent, focused on education and conservation." "And your family? What do they think of this venture?" Julian's smile was rueful. "My father considers it a waste of resources. We're not exactly on speaking terms these days." "Because of the divorce?" "Because of everything. The divorce, this project, my decision to step away from the hotel business." He shrugged. "It turns out there's a certain freedom in disappointment. Once you've failed to meet expectations, the pressure to conform diminishes considerably." Olivia studied him thoughtfully. The Julian she had known had been confident but constrained, always aware of invisible boundaries. This man before her seemed more grounded, more authentic. "What would my role be? If I agreed to be involved?" "Whatever you want it to be. Artistic director, curriculum developer, visiting lecturer, or simply an advisor during the planning stages." "I'm not presuming anything, Olivia," she nodded slowly. "I'll think about it." Over the following weeks, they met regularly to discuss the project. Professional conversations gradually gave way to more personal ones. Julian spoke openly about the failure of his marriage, about the emptiness he had felt even surrounded by luxury and privilege. Olivia shared stories of her struggles and triumphs, the nights she had doubted herself and the moments of creative breakthrough. Slowly, carefully, they rebuilt a connection, not the headlong rush of their first romance, but something more measured, more honest. On a crisp autumn day, almost exactly 2 years after their first meeting in the rain, they walked together through the botanical garden. The site had been chosen for the new center, a fitting symmetry that wasn't lost on either of them. "Construction begins next month," Julian said, pointing to where the foundations would be laid. "The first classes could start next fall." Olivia gazed at the space, imagining students gathered there, learning to see the world through an artist's eyes. "I've decided to accept the artistic director position." Julian's face lit up. "Really? That's wonderful news." "On one condition," she added. "This has to be a true partnership. Equal voices, equal vision. I wouldn't want it any other way." They continued walking, comfortable in each other's company in a way that felt both familiar and entirely new. When their hands brushed accidentally, Olivia didn't pull away. "Do you think we could try again?" Julian asked quietly. "Not picking up where we left off, but starting something new? Something better?" Olivia stopped walking and turned to face him. "I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago, Julian. I know. Neither am I. I won't compromise myself for anyone, not even you. Not ever again. I would never ask you to." She considered him thoughtfully. I think we could try. Slowly. One day at a time." When he smiled, she saw both the man she had loved and someone new. Someone who had faced his own failures and emerged stronger, more authentic. Perhaps they both had. As they continued their walk, planning the future of the center, Olivia felt a sense of rightness settle over her. Not the breathless excitement of first love, but something deeper, more enduring, the quiet confidence of choosing a path with clear eyes and an open heart. The garden around them was transitioning from summer abundance to autumn clarity, leaves turning golden in the afternoon light. Some plants were fading, making room for others to flourish. Some were going dormant, gathering strength for a future season. Olivia understood now what her younger self could not, that endings were also beginnings, that broken hearts could mend into something stronger, and that true love, the kind worth building a life around, was not about grand gestures or fairy tale promises, but about growing together through changing seasons. When Julian's hand found hers again, she laced her fingers through his, not giving herself away this time, but choosing to share the journey, whatever it might bring. The Botanical Center would become their shared legacy, a place where art and science, beauty and purpose, past and future, could coexist and flourish. Like the gardens they both loved, it would grow and change with the seasons, adapting to new challenges while remaining true to its essential nature. And in that quiet moment, with autumn light gilding the world around them, Olivia knew that whatever path they chose, together or apart, her heart was finally, truly, completely her own.